Hi, this is Greg Johnson with resourcesforlife.com, and this is a brief video to explore and respond to 7 questions that came in by email about the small house movement. And so I'm going to go ahead and just read those questions and answer them now. The first question is, coming up, how did the movement start? And then there's some question as to, are there specific people who may have been instigators of the movement? Certainly Sarah Suzanka and Jay Schaefer are key, I guess you would say, founders of this movement, at least the present day representation of the small house movement. Obviously there have been people living in small dwellings by choice and by necessity throughout history. And certainly you can see, if we were to almost archaeologically excavate you know, the human experience, even present day, we don't need to dig down through layers. We can see homes from every, decade essentially, that represent kind of a smaller, simpler choice to living. So I think it's hard to say that, to point to a specific moment or person and say, well, that person, started the small house movement, or the small house movement began in, 2001 or something like that. I think it dates back much further. So the second question, let me read that. I guess, I might say, though, that I think since the year 2000, technology has allowed us to, as here I'm holding my iPhone, which is a GPS mapping system, it's email, it's the internet, it's a TV set, it's a radio, it's everything you want it to be. Obviously miniaturization and the convergence of technologies has allowed us to live smaller without sacrificing. So I think, as technology has gotten smaller, we've seen smaller homes and smaller offices, and also the awareness of the need to be green and to have a smaller footprint. I think that's influenced the movement. For how long have you lived in your 140 square foot house? That's question number 2. Actually lived in the home from the fall of 2003 until the fall of 2009, which was just actually as of August of 2009. I moved into a tiny apartment here in downtown Iowa City. And but during those 6 years that I was living in the house, it was a wonderful experience. I wrote a book about my life in the tiny house. It's called Put Your Life on a Diet: Lessons Learned Living in 140 Square Feet. And if you want to find out more, you can just go ahead and get the book, or check online. I have quite a bit online about that. So anyway, to answer the question, 6 years in the 10 by 7 house. And it's called the Mobile Hermitage. You can read more about the Mobile Hermitage at resourcesforlife.com. And question number 3. What is the most fun thing about living in a small house? And what's the worst part of it? Well, I think the most fun part is, if it's designed well, you are that much closer to nature that surrounds you. And it's a very simple and peaceful and serene and efficient way to live. So those are the benefits. The drawbacks are, for a super tiny house like mine, you don't have all of the amenities such as, a full-size kitchen or shower or bathroom and that type of thing. So anyway, that's, I guess, a quick answer to the question about, the benefits and drawbacks. Question number 4, how did your family and friends react when you moved in? Initially I think people were kind of excited, but also wondering, how would this work? Because it was such a unique thing that not many people have done before, to basically get rid of a lot of possessions and downsize and live in such a small space. So it was kind of with shock, but as well with enthusiasm and good wishes, that it would go well. So anyway, let's see. I'm going to answer these last few questions. Do you ever consider moving into a bigger place? Well, I've done that now, but it's not much bigger. It's about between 200 and 300 square feet, the small apartment that I'm in, very similar to the small house, and sort of modeling the experience that I had there. Question number 5, do you ever consider, oh, that was moving into a bigger place. That's what I just answered. Question 6, oh, showering at the gym, is it expensive after all living in a small house? Actually, it's really quite inexpensive living in a small house, because you really don't have the cost of heating and cooling, and the electricity bill and these other things are much smaller, so the costs are really reduced, and you don't have the upkeep that you normally have with a bigger house. And then finally, question 7, do you know of anybody from Portugal that's embraced smaller living? As I say, I think people from around the world have embraced smaller living, and it's probably only a handful of people, though, that have been able to get the publicity that we've seen in recent years living small. And it's not so much because, you know, nobody's ever lived in a tiny space before. I think what we're finding is that although people have lived in tiny spaces before, what's unique right now is people who would have other options are choosing to live small, and this is what's really newsworthy and interesting. So I hope that answers those 7 questions. If there are more questions, feel free to email back, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Thanks!